Good morning, everyone. So, Tier here with your daily wake up rundown. Today we are going to be focusing on the Baron Dance. And just as a side note, make sure you file your taxes. Very important. The day is coming. The day is nigh. Actually, generally tax day is yesterday, but since it's on the weekend, you get extra days. Or something along those lines. I had to do mine last night. It was very painful. Very painful. I think doing taxes for everyone's very painful, but since I was technically an independent contractor last year, I owe a lot of money as opposed to getting back any money. So like, oh no. Anyways, shell out quite a hefty handful. But the Baron Dance, and as you see here, unusually I'm in a game. Why am I in a game, you may ask? I am in a game to demonstrate one thing, because I was playing, 2K Elo match, and this person was like 2100 Elo. They're like, can I go farm bottom? And I was like, no, you can't go farm bottom. And we'll see why. Okay, it's 14:30 now. This is a usual place you'd be farming bottom at this time. Running. Now, the Baron Dance is what happens, 25 minutes in, when generally a team has to get an Oracle and they start clearing out all the wards up there. And then you're like, okay, well we don't have sight. Either we have to go up there as a team and clear out wards with our own Oracle, or just sneak wards up there when they're, when they don't have them, when they don't have any presence up there, so on and so forth. So you see, it took me until like 14:55, 14:57 to get up there. So 14:30 to 14:57, that's 25 seconds. The thing is, at like 25 minutes, even a team that's not stellar at doing Baron, they can do it in like 25 seconds. So if you're at bottom and people see that, then hey, your Baron is gone. We're going to run it from the other side here as well, just so you can see this. Now, the complaint I had from my teammate was like, man, you guys all went back. I could have gone and cleared bottom out. Well, yes and no. One, when you go back to base, the reason going back to base is safer than going bottom is if you go back to base, they don't exactly know when you're going back, hopefully, and, it does take about a similar amount of time. It takes about 25 seconds to get there, but... Oh no! Okay, that was stellar play. Alright. That's why I can't play Ahri. Oh man, I really wanted to smite the bear. Anyways, really awesome play, can't even kill bots. Okay, if you go back to base, they don't see you, but if you go show a bottom, they're like, oh, I know he's not going to be there for 25 seconds. Now, I mean, there are champions that can move around quicker, and they're a little bit safer to go bottom. There are champions that have teleport, obviously. They're pretty safe to split push. But you always have to be careful at that 25-minute mark, because, I mean, actually really good teams can clear Baron in like 10 seconds, and if you're bottom, man, you have no shot. If they have like a Cassiopeia, or multiple Wriggles, or anything along those lines, you have to be really careful. Alright, so this is like, if you were purple side, this might be where you're starting. So we're going to start at 17 minutes, and we'll run over to Baron from here. Yeah, so we actually had to wait until No, don't chase me, Antibot. Okay, also keep in mind here, 17:05 at blue buff. Run. Hopefully this tower doesn't kill me. Okay, now about 25 seconds to get here. I mean, granted, you could probably do something at like 23 seconds, like attack them. Obviously, if I was playing Ahri in the game, I would have Spirit Rush. That would help me, like, get there 2 seconds faster, perhaps, and be doing damage. But, I mean, that's kind of the general premise, is if you show yourself bottom, they know it's going to be 25 seconds before you get up to Baron, and most good teams can do Baron in 25 seconds. That being said, if your team, isn't far behind, your team could probably stall out the Baron for that amount of time. But you have to keep into consideration who's on their team and who's on your team. Does their team have really good initiation, like a Warwick, for instance, like an Ashe, for instance? Because if they do, then you have to be really worried about your team being initiated on 5v4, and that's another reason you can't go bottom. Now, if you have like a really great poke comp team, like Nidalee, AP Kog'Maw, so on and so forth, people that can poke from like 1200 range, or, in Kog'Maw's case, like 2200 range, then maybe you can like allow them to do that while you push bottom. But regardless, it's very dangerous after 25 minutes, even after 20 minutes, to be bottom. Now, it's particularly dangerous to have two people show bottom, and I often tell my team, hey, okay, go bot, but don't have two people show bottom. Because as soon as you have two people show bottom, the other team knows, hey, there's two people bottom, there's two people out of this fight for 25 seconds. We can either do Baron here, or we can bait them into a Baron. And baiting them into a Baron essentially means you start doing Baron, and you're really just hoping that someone comes in to interrupt, and then you kill them, and then you kill the next person that comes in to interrupt, and so on and so forth, until you can actually do Baron, because you've essentially aced the rest of the team. Now, proper ward coverage, of course, helps stop people from doing Baron, but, you know, at this point, someone probably has an Oracle, someone probably has pink wards. So, one thing is, if they haven't invested in an Oracle, the Baron Dance is a lot harder to do. You can put wards up here, there, you know, even there, and there. If you are blue side, if you're, is that right? If you're purple side, rather. If you're blue side, you can put wards there, up there again, and beyond the back, so that if they're only carrying a pink ward and they're only warding right here, you'll still see the whole team come towards Baron. In which case, you know they're essentially going to do it. Now, the Baron Dance is a little complicated, besides the fact, okay, you know, at a certain point you can't have anyone go bottom. It is complicated in seeing who gets the better position. Now, if a team has oracles and then the other team does not, man, they have a huge advantage, because they can just clear out all these wards. And actually, I was watching, I think it was the ESL series, and it was Curse versus Legion. It was a ridiculously good game. Like, Curse got the first two Barons, had like 10 kills up, or like 20,000 gold up, but they couldn't push, and they couldn't push in large part because probably Racist was playing AP Janna, and they couldn't push down towers because like one tornado would clear out a wave, and then she would just shield the turret, and it had 600 extra hit points. But one thing Curse did was they cleared out all the wards all over here, all down here, all here, and then they all sat right here. Now, you can't see around this area right here, of course, if you're coming up, and this is probably the safest, I mean, people think this is the safest way to get a ward to Baron. Because if you go through here, there's a bunch of bushes here, you can camp out here, you can camp out here if you are, you know, purple team trying to force the Baron. But, what Curse did is they all waited right here. I think they caught Lotta-Mortis, who was on Alistar, and just killed him right as it came around. And now they're like, oh, it was a jungle Alistar, by the way. So they're like, oh, now they don't have Smite, let's just go do Baron. And so they did do Baron, and they actually got like 2 consecutive Barons, and then but Curse just was not able to finish. It was a pretty stellar game. But what they did do is they really had a really great Baron Dance for the first two go-arounds, where they just cleared out all the wards, and then they picked, you know, a great place to hide. In this case, it was here. Here's a good place. Here's a good place. This place, you know, here is a, you know, decent place to hide, because you can probably, you know, at any point past 20 minutes, if someone walks into this bush, you're going to kill them. But, you know, if you can't kill them instantly, they can just flash down here to this turret if that turret's still up. That turret shouldn't be up by like 20 minutes, but if it is, I mean, they can always just flash over there as well. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you're blue team, you want to do the same thing. And particularly if you're warding Baron, you want to clear out and you want to drop wards over here as well. Right there. So you can see people if they try to steal it. But one thing, people are always a little bit impatient for whatever reason in this Baron Dance, because there's a lot of ways to be super effective at picking off people. For example, if they know Baron is in play, if you have oracles, you clear out this area, and then you wait, you know, in this bush, or in this bush over here. The other team is likely going to just run right into you. Now, they might be scared, they might be worried, hey, there might be people in that bush, but it depends on their team. Do they have someone that can, like, you know, show the fog of war there without getting close enough? And, you know, for that purpose, like, even if you place a ward, wards don't have such great distance. I think they probably have, like, 500 difference. They probably have like 500 distance, so even if they walk up here, they probably have to get to right here to put this ward in the bush. Well, if you have anyone on your team with like a ranged stun or anything, you just instantly blow them up. And the great thing about Baron baiting and like camping in bushes is the fact that, you know, a support often feels like it's their job to put the wards on Baron, and it is their job. That being said, like, a lot of times they'll be down in bottom lane until like 20-25 minutes, in which case you're relying on jungler or top lane to put those wards down. But at some point, you know, the support is going to come up here, and the support is actually relatively weak because they don't have any items. I mean, they have very few items. They probably have like 2 GP10 items at 20 minutes in. So they are incredibly squishy. They might even be wearing an Oracle. And you come around here, and their team is likely to not protect them. For whatever reason, like, a lot of teams don't understand, hey, we have to go clear out Baron as a team. Hey, I have to go place these wards, but you have to come with me as a team. Because really, you could have like 3 people waiting in this bush, maybe even 2 people waiting in this bush if they're like any sort of Fed or if it's an AP carry. And that support is going to die if they don't have backup, which most of the time they will not have backup. So anyways, that is kind of like the basics of the Baron dance. Some other things, of course, some other pointers and tips and tricks. Baron will attack the closest member to him. So, and he also applies debuffs, attack damage debuffs, and armor and magic resistance debuffs. And they stack, the more he attacks you. So even if you're not the tank, you know, try to run in there if you have any sort of sustain and get 1 hit, because then it'll reset the debuffs on your tank. It's generally a pretty good idea. Also move around so you don't get knocked up, but if you are squishy, don't be right next to him. And when a fight breaks out, I see this mistake even made by pros. When a fight breaks out and you're the AD carry, it's normally a bad idea to come back here and hide behind Baron if everyone's fighting over here, because suddenly you're the closest one to Baron and he's hitting you for like 400 hit points per hit, and you're just absolutely getting wrecked, and you're getting all these debuffs on you. So a trick is, if there is a fight around Baron, try to get your whole team out of the pit, and try to even use like CC, like Janna's knockback, Tristana's knockback. Do whatever you can to get their team inside of the pit. Now, the great thing is a lot of people want to be inside the pit so they can steal the Baron. But, you know, if the Baron has enough hit points, just let them go in there, let them take the damage. Also, if you're like skirmishing around here, oh, shoot. Bad Baron, bad Baron. If you're skirmishing around here, like, make sure, like, you can walk next to Baron, but then be sure to, like, back off and come into the corner or something. Stop hitting the Baron! Baron's gonna wreck me. So obviously, Ahri, not a very good person to solo the Baron, but yes, don't stand next to the Baron. Make sure the opposing team is standing next to Baron. It'll really help out in any fights. I've also heard the general rule is, if Baron is below 5,000 hit points, you know, later on in the game he'll actually have more hit points, try to burst him down if the enemy team is still, like, on its way. Now, if it has more than that, just turn and initiate on the enemy team. Because you really shouldn't be doing the Baron dance unless you have an advantage. There's certainly exceptions to that, but mainly you want an advantage, you want to make sure they have no wards on Baron, otherwise it's really, really dangerous to do it. Sometimes, like, I feel like, oh, it's our only chance, we have to try to do this Baron. And like, a lot of times it does work out. You can counter Baron, which is one of my favorite things. If they, like, come down, they push, and they actually, like, win a team fight, but then, like, say they win a team fight around here. I can't ping. Okay. Say they win a team fight around there. And then they push down this turret, and then they, like, almost push down this turret, but your whole team responds. But suddenly these guys are at like half health or like a quarter health and probably out of mana. Make sure you judge how much mana and how much health they have left. Because more than likely they're going to do, you know, if they just came out of a successful fight, they're going to do one of 3 or 4 things. First, they're just going to go back. That's probably their best call. Now if they go back, they still have about 30 seconds to run back to Baron. And if you're ready right here, you only have 20 and they might not run straight away. They'll probably pick up other things. 2, they might try to grab your buffs. They might go to red buff, they might go to blue buff. If your buffs are up, then you should try to go to protect them, especially blue buff. Now you can actually let them go get red buff, and you know, it's always great. Wards are great no matter how you spell. If you're losing and you have a ward right here and you see them running towards your red buff, you're like, great. Especially if they're low life, they're like, okay, let them have our red buff. Let's all rush up to Baron right now, because they're gonna have to go to red buff and then probably back. They also may go to Dragon, in which case they'll probably have to back after that as well, because they probably don't have their whole team going to Dragon, because for whatever reason, the later on in the game it is, people are like, oh, they can just take the Dragon themselves. Yeah, certainly you can take the Dragon yourself as almost any champion, like after 25 minutes, but it might take you a while, is the issue. So the counter Baron is the idea that, hey, these people have to do something, and we figure they're not just going straight back. They might go take our buffs, they might go to Dragon, they might go push a lane, especially if you see like bottom lane. If bottom lane's pushing like this, man, they are going to be super tempted to go down there, especially if they're winning. They're like, oh, they're not going to go Baron, so they can come down here. And hey, suddenly for more than 25 seconds, you have, you know, free reign over Baron. Now, certainly make sure that you bring a pink ward or have an oracle or something along those lines, because even if you have an advantage, you know, position-wise and number-wise, if you don't clear that out, then they're like, you know, they have a very high chance of stealing the Baron. I always feel like it's easier to steal a Baron than properly smite secure it. And the reason is because, you know, as the person doing Baron, you're like worried about your team, you're worried about zoning out the other team, you're worried about so many different things, but as the jungler who wants to get in there and steal the Baron, he's like, he is a one-track mind. He doesn't care if he dies, he doesn't care what he blows, all he wants to do is get that smite on the Baron at the appropriate time. Especially if his team's out of position, he's like, okay, well, I'll die. I don't even care about dying. I'm basically, that's a foregone conclusion. I'm going to die, but all I want is to steal that Baron. So certainly, if you are counter-baroning, be sure to bring a pink ward or an oracle or something along those lines. But that is a really good strategy. If you lose a fight, and I've seen so many games change that way, turn that way, like suddenly a team loses a fight, but the other team just pushes for a little bit too long, gets a little bit too low, and, you know, puts themselves in a position where they can be so easily counter-baroned that, you know, you'd be remiss not to take advantage of that situation, especially if you're down, because I always feel if you're down, you need to do something drastic, and Baron is something drastic. Baron, the reason why people love Baron is because it's like getting an ace in terms of gold. Certainly in terms of, you know, just flat-out gold, you get 300 gold per person. That's like a kill per person. Now, granted, you know, it's not like an ace, because with an ace, you oftentimes get assists, but the buff itself is also very, very good. Now that being said, say you're trying to take Baron, and you get Baron, but you lose 4 people, and you only kill 1 of their people. They probably, I don't know, they probably won that encounter, especially if they can go, you know, obviously they now have 4 people up and you have 1 person up. If they go take a turret, they just won that encounter, and despite the fact that one of your people still has Baron buff, you're probably not going to be able to take advantage of that. And since they have so many people alive, they're going to either, you know, sweep your jungle and clear out buffs, or take a turret. You know, both of which will help them more than that 1 Baron buff on a person. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, at least we got Baron. I mean, that's kind of a saying in our community games, at least we got Baron even if you didn't get Baron. But getting Baron doesn't really justify losing like 4 people, for instance, or getting aced, unless it's like a 5-3 ace, in which case, you know, you might come out ahead, but you have to realize, oh, they have 2 people that are actually doing something for those, you know, next 50 seconds while your team is all dead. You know, no matter what they're doing, if they're pushing down a turret, just farming a lane, farming their jungle, they're making, you know, significant amounts of money in that whole, like, essentially minute before that you're out of commission, because you're probably dead for 30 to 40 seconds, and then it'll take you, you know, 15 seconds to get anywhere worthwhile. So anyways, that's kind of my rundown of the Baron dance. The importance of Baron cannot be understated. If you're losing a game, you can't give up Baron, because Baron is stronger than basically every turret, in my opinion. Granted, now turrets can like make the other team lose focus, and if the turret does get on the attack damage carry, that's really, you know, really harmful for them. But if you have Baron and you were slightly ahead before you got Baron, then you don't even care about these turrets. You dive at any point that you see fit, and you're probably going to win that fight. So I always feel like as a losing team, you really cannot just like give away Baron. That being said, we saw, you know, Legion give up 2 Barons, and they're just like, you know, we have a really good defensive team. We're just going to tornado out all those minions, you know, shield our turret, and not worry about business. So I guess there is that, in the sense that you can lose Baron and hold off, but most teams are not going to be, you know, a professional level, Legion level of coordination and discipline, in the sense that, hey, you know, they have Baron, we can't really initiate unless we have a super big advantage, we can't get caught at the turret, we can't do a number of things here. Legion was really, really good at just like holding off on the turret, and they actually won a couple of fights because they noticed that I think it was it Pobelter? I think it was Pobelter on Olaf. Like on occasion, he was pushing top while the rest of his team was right here, and so Legion actually won a fight because they engaged. They got a perfect engage on Corki, and simply won the fight, even though the opposition had Baron. So, ooh, Jukes on top of Jukes. Oh man, I'm bad at this game. That's it. Alright. Good morning. So we are going to get out of this game. That's the end of the Wake Up Rundown. Going to get into solo queue streaming.